furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio, radio with bite.
Years ago, a man in a hotel in Ireland invited a woman for coffee in an elevator. That man is known today only as Elevator Guy. The woman was feminist Rebecca Watson of the blog Skepchick in Ireland to speak at a conference on skepticism and atheism. I hate to describe Ms. Watson as an atheist. She may not believe in a god or the supernatural, but she does subscribe to a set of beliefs that are as unfalsifiable as any theistic religion, complete with an omnipresent and near omnipotent yet unfalsifiable force for all evil, the patriarchy, and a morally unquestionable force for all good, women's equality. And given her adherence to that set of unfalsifiable beliefs, it is impossible to describe Ms. Watson as a skeptic. What she is, when one examines her body of work, is obsessed with sexism, victimhood, misogyny, and sexual violence against women. To her, and many women like her, Elevator Guy, with his politely worded invitation to continue an interesting conversation over a cup of coffee, was sexualizing and objectifying a woman, a problem Ms. Watson claims is endemic in the atheist and skeptic communities. And while her public addressing of this incident, if so small a thing could be called something as consequential as an incident, was the gentle and barely controversial scold, "Guys, don't do that." It touched off a heated debate within the community that undermined both its unity and its credibility. When Richard Dawkins, the closest thing to a pope in atheism, scolded the community, not just Rebecca, for blowing such a small thing out of all reasonable proportion, Watson and her supporters went on the attack, dismissing his position as that of an old, rich white man who, by the mere virtue of being old and rich and white, should be ignored at best and assumed malicious and sexist at worst. A tall ideological fence was soon erected with any skeptic who expressed, skepticism regarding the purported sexism/harassment problem rumored to be running rampant throughout the community, shoved into the misogynistic rape apologist, woman-hating camp. On the other side of the fence, feminists and their supporters created a safe space. Safe from criticism or challenge, safe from questions, safe from discomfort, safe from having to provide evidence of a problem, and safe from having their beliefs tested in the free marketplace of ideas. Questioning the existence of the patriarchy or rape culture, or expressing doubt that society is poisonously misogynistic, became a form of blasphemy, and those who dared to do it found themselves excommunicated. Whispering campaigns began, wherein the scarlet letter of sexism was pinned on the breast of anyone who doubted the kind of friend of a friend hearsay typical of those alleging the community was unsafe for women. Rape threatoids and trolling became a badge of honored female victimhood among the persecuted feminists and their supporters, and portrayed as a misogynistic campaign to silence women who dare to share their opinions, despite scads of research demonstrating that abusive feedback and threats are actually experienced more frequently by men. On social media, mass blockings of individuals guilty of associating with sexist undesirables began occurring. Ban hammers slammed down hard and fast enough to register on a seismic equipment, and notable and respected atheists and skeptics were routinely vilified as woman-haters and creeps for daring to engage in that most dastardly form of rape apologia, asking for evidence. Comment threads were set to modification or closed down altogether, ratings were disabled, and politely worded criticisms were described as hateful attacks. "You're either one of us or one of them" was the catchphrase of the day. And you know the them we're talking about, the woman-haters and rape apologists. Women who spoke out against feminist portrayals of the community as one rife with sexual violence and harassment were duly punished. Abby Smith, a virologist, suffered an attempt by feminist Greg Layden to sabotage her career when she expressed her opposition to the feminist crew at Free Thought Blogs and Atheism Plus. Paula Kirby was lambasted for her excellent open letter, The Sisterhood of the Oppressed. Meanwhile, the echo chamber tightened, nothing but hysteria and paranoia emerged, and nothing but agreement got in. A recorded video chat between P.Z. Myers, Watson, Jen McCrite, and others fielded the assertion that those women who claim to have never experienced sexism or harassment at conferences might not be lying, but had somehow not been given the tools and education to recognize when they're being harassed. Also discussed was the fact that while free speech should rightly be protected, a person's right to free speech ends when another person's ears might be offended by it. A strange position to take for a group who's made intentionally offending religious people a part of their mission statement. P.Z. Myers recently distilled the conflict down to the question of whether women in the atheist and skeptic communities are to be considered equal human beings or whether they're to be considered eye candy and fuck toys for the white men. A funny thing, considering PZ is both white and male, and not long prior to this assertion had been filmed sexually harassing a discomfited-looking female audience member at the podium in front of dozens of attendees. But hypocrisy is like breathing for these people, as natural as anything. Rebecca Don't Sexualize Me Watson has posed nude for a Sexy Women of Skepticism calendar and has been photographed holding her already tiny top open so a man could shove money down her bra. Amy Roth, after her own website was linked to as evidence that she could not be doxxed merely by the posting of information she had already made public, went on to drop Justin Vakula's parents' phone number and address, asking people to write or call to inform them they'd raised a misogynistic monster who refuses to believe that sexual harassment and assault are a systemic problem in the community. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, or rather the conferences, female participation, which had been at an all-time high prior to Elevator Guy's indecent proposal, with 40% female attendance and approaching 50% female speakers and panelists, began to head somewhere no one likes, in a handbasket. Feminists in Watson's camp claimed this proved their position that conferences are an unsafe place for women in the community, despite the only changes having been made at said conferences being the institution of policies and procedures to make women more safe. It certainly couldn't have anything to do with the women in the community being fed a steady diet of rape and harassment hysteria by Watson and her ilk, leading them to feel less safe than they objectively are. Nah. There's a communist under every bed and a rapist in every elevator. And then it happened. Finally, a woman came forward and actually described being sexually assaulted at one of these conferences. YouTuber Healthy Addict. There was nothing particularly unbelievable in her story, but by this time the discourse on sexual harassment and assault had been so thoroughly poisoned that no skeptic worthy of the name could simply take the uncorroborated story at face value. Many reserved judgment, given that, according to Healthy Addict, there was evidence of the incident in the form of an official report to conference staff and in the form of witnesses. And yet, instead of presenting the conference organizers' report on the incident or asking the several witnesses interviewed by conference staff to step up and corroborate her claims, when doubted, she uploaded a second video castigating the community for the handful of negative comments she'd received and explaining that this is why women who are assaulted don't come forward. But oddly enough, other people, mostly women, have since come forward, not all of them anonymously, with accusations ranging from sexist comments and rape jokes to harassment to serial rape. Some of these cases and victims appear to be more credible than others, at least on the surface, and as a thinking person, I understand the necessity to suspend judgment either way until actual evidence is presented. Yet at the same time, in every single case other than that of Healthy Addict, who seems to have set off this cascade of accusations, each more sinister than the last, the names of the accused are revealed with fervent and morbid glee on feminist blogs. And all of these names oddly enough, are big and recognizable ones. Men in positions of status and authority, heads of foundations, best-selling and award-winning scientists and authors, senior editors of publications, organizers of popular conferences, media darlings. And as far as I know, the only evidence against them is rumor, innuendo, and uncorroborated, sometimes anonymous anecdotes. Fancy that. Not a single accusation against someone with no power, no status, no fame. No accusations against a nobody. A loser. It's difficult to call this a witch hunt, since witches don't exist, while rapists and sexual harassers certainly do. We now know for a fact that every single witch who was ever burned at the stake was innocent of witchcraft. But this situation in the atheist community is more dangerous by far, as there is simply no way to know as yet whether innocent men are being unjustly smeared. One thing I will say is that oftentimes in our all too imperfect past, as humans, a single mundane and believable accusation of sexual misconduct or abuse has set off Salem-esque barrages of ever more far-fetched and contrived accusations. One recent example is the satanic daycare sex abuse scandals of the 1980s and 90s, which culminated in preposterous reports by children that daycare workers were flying around the room, and claims by zealots that babies had been murdered and their fat melted down to make candle wax. The claims being made here and now in the atheist skeptic community are, in comparison, more ordinary and plausible, and therein lies our peril. If authorities in the U.S. and Canada in the late 20th century could be convinced to believe that satanic cults were running daycares, ritually abusing children, and rendering dead babies down to make candles, resulting in dozens of innocent people being hounded and even imprisoned, then how much easier will it be to convince people on little or no or ambiguous evidence that a man in a position of power or authority has committed an act we all are aware happens every single day? Will this flurry of finger-pointing by women with an agenda end up sharing an honored place next to Salem, the satanic daycare scandals, and McCarthy among the cautionary tales we must tell our children in future generations?
So, welcome to the second episode of Honey Badger Radio. This is Typhon Blue, your host, and joining me today is Della Burton. Say hi, Della.
Hello.
And Girl Writes What?
Howdy.
So the topic today is witch hunt and atheism. And Girl Writes What has provided the intro, the context, and a bit of criticism of what's going on. So let's just dive right into it and start the discussion. Do you have anything to add to that, well, pretty comprehensive intro there, Della?
Well, it just seems like the skeptic community is losing a lot of its skepticism. I mean, it's supposed to be what they're about, requiring evidence before they believe in something. And this is a situation where they've just completely thrown that away.
Well,
yeah,
I wouldn't say that they've thrown that away. I would say that a particular segment of the atheist community has thrown away skepticism. But that there are a whole bunch of people in that community who are they are justifiably skeptical of all of these claims, and some of them are sort of notable and popular members of that community. Thunderfoot, Mr. Deity, The Amazing Atheist, a bunch of people that sort of have a certain degree of popular support. So there is hope. There is hope that skepticism will prevail, or at least balanced mindedness, sort of the reservation of judgment. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, it sort of casts a pall on the whole community, Because really, if you're not willing to stand against people who are engaging in this kind of emotional thinking without any grounding in or very little grounding in actual fact, then you sort of betray yourself as vulnerable to that kind of, even if you're not engaging in it, if you don't shout it down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at it and you think that the most severe accusations, the ones of there have been some that are sort of reasonably credible. I would look at Karen Stolznow's accusation against somebody that she did not name, but that was outed by other feminist blogs. It has to be this guy, right? She was drawing attention to a problem. She was not trying to bury an individual. She did not have an axe to grind against an individual. She was just basically saying there's a problem. I would consider that maybe something that we could look at with with a bit of fair-mindedness. When you look at Jen McCrite and her accusation against Lawrence Krauss, that he propositioned her. Basically, he invited her to have sex with him on a cruise for atheists and skeptics. That this is an example of the endemic harassment and sexual assault that's rife in the community. Since when is an invitation to have sex such a huge freaking deal? This is what gets me.
Especially when it's politely, when it's declined, the person politely responds, right?
Yeah. No, this is the whole thing with Elevator Guy too, right? That he offered, for all intents and purposes, for however much she said that he was sexualizing her, all we know, even given her account, is that he said he found her interesting, he would like to talk more, would you like to have coffee? Right? And she interpreted that as sexualizing her, and then everybody in the community they split along the lines of whether he was actually sexualizing her unfairly and in a sexist manner, and therefore is a potential rapist, and oh my goodness, she has every right to feel terrified for being asked for coffee in an elevator. And then the other half going, wait a minute, all he did was ask for a cup of coffee to continue a conversation that he found interesting with a person he found interesting in an elevator. Like, how is he even sexualizing you? There was no sex even mentioned.
Yeah.
He actually just said he found you interesting and would like to talk more.
And the thing is,
right? So how is that?
Her sexualizing him, because if it is just saying, I'd like to speak to you more, the reality is that I think for a lot of guys, that there's a certain amount of, exchanged, conversation and, compatibility, verbal compatibility that necessarily has to happen before they're like, okay, I want to have sex with you. So he wasn't necessarily saying, this is a prelude to sex. I'm expressing a sexual interest to you. He may have actually been saying, let's talk, and maybe I'll see if I'm interested in having sex with you. She immediately jumps to, oh, yeah, what he wants is to have sex. And that's sexualizing him.
Well, you might even not have been saying, let's talk, and eventually I might want to have sex with you. You might have been just saying, let's talk. And that's the thing that really bothered me about that story, is it really doesn't say anything about the person that's being accused. When someone accuses someone of sexual harassment based on an ordinary comment like that, it really says more about the accuser and what the accuser's mentality is than it does about the accused.
Well, and when you look at the fallout from that too, right? When people were like, okay, so who was this guy, right? And there were pictures of the people in the bar beforehand, before she went to bed, people all sitting around the table. What he said to her in the elevator was, I find you very interesting. I would like to talk more, right? I would like to talk more, indicating that, and this is what she said, he said. I would like to talk more, indicating that they had already been talking. And when people were like, okay, so who is this guy? What did she do? She said she had prosopagnosia or whatever the freak disorder it is that makes it impossible to recognize people's faces. Now, I'm sorry, but she does not seem to be the kind of person that has a disorder. It would be next to impossible to function in a conference setting as a speaker if you are unable to recognize people by their faces.
Yeah,
right? She simply did not want to identify the man, the alleged man that she allegedly claims allegedly propositioned her to, enjoy a cup of coffee and further conversation in an elevator. Like, she literally is not interested in providing any details, right?
It's like she just wanted to have the story for the victim cred.
Yeah, and it poisons the entire atmosphere. It poisons the discourse. It poisons the feminist perspective on all of these things. And as much as I would love to see the feminist perspective poisoned at every opportunity, I have to say that this was a poorly played hand on her part. To concoct a story or to relay a story and then not be willing to back it up with anything, even though she had provided details that, yes, I know this guy, yes, I recognize him, yes, I was talking to him earlier, yes, he would be in the photo of us at the bar, all of these things, and then she's like, oh, no, I have this disorder that makes it impossible for me to recognize any faces, even those that I love.
How deeply convenient. And also,
yeah.
It's like, this is such an innocuous, vanilla, bland thing to happen. Like, just,
yeah.
It's basically, it sort of gets a little scary because there were times in the past where certain groups of men, if they came up and talked to certain groups of women, that itself would have been considered a horrible act.
Oh, my goodness. If you actually spoke before being spoken to as a black man to a white woman, that'd earn you a beating.
Well, that actually goes even further. I mean, if you've ever read about Victorian manners in the upper class, if you were a man, you weren't actually supposed to talk to a woman until she indicated that she would allow you to talk to her. You could maybe walk up to her and hand her your calling card, or no, you had to hand it to her chaperone.
Yes.
But he gave no indication, that she did not indicate that she wished to talk to you. You were not allowed to speak to her.
Yes.
And during the Victorian era, I suppose that's what we're trying to come back to. And it's that kind of you do not speak until spoken to if you are a man, and you do not speak in the presence of a lady unless she wishes you to speak. At all times, you must remain silent until she bequeaths her attention upon you. And it's like, whoa.
Well, when I look at it, I was reading a Facebook meme or a comment from somebody who had posted some meme on Facebook or some other social networking site just yesterday or today. And they basically said, all we want is for women to be respected automatically, right? And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but that's what you had 300 years ago. Right?
Yeah.
300 years ago, there were specific rules in place so that people could not say to you anything that would ever make you uncomfortable. If they did, they would face repercussions. They would face pistols at dawn.
Yeah, and it's and the other thing is that respect. What kind of respect is it if you don't earn it? That's not respect. That's
of course not. But this is the whole way that women have been respected. At least as far as if their virtue was intact, if they were women of good reputation, right? If they were not promiscuous, if they had not had sex outside of marriage, if they had a good reputation, women of good repute, they commanded a level of automatic respect that sometimes led men to their deaths when that respect was violated, right? And this seems to be what feminists like Rebecca Watson want to have now, except they don't want to have to be a woman of good repute. They want to just possess a vagina and be able to have men, fight to the death for their honor, such as it is, right? for the automatic respect that women have always had if they held to their part of the bargain, right? They want respect. They don't want to have to hold to their part of the bargain,
or at least appeared to hold to their part of the bargain. It's at this point you don't get it. The cat is out of the bag. Schrodinger's razor
is out of the tube.
From the elevator. It's just not. It's not going to happen anymore. Unfortunately, that particular social contract, you can't maintain it while simultaneously wanting people or men to respect you like they respect other men. I mean, you can't expect men to respect your ability to act and simultaneously say, well, I have to treat you like fine china. And this is what's so aggravating about this situation is the hypocrisy, and it's not just in these contradictory expectations. It's also in the attitude of the sexualization itself. I mean, here they are. They're saying, well, this guy has sexualized Rebecca Watson, or this guy has sexualized whatever feminist victim du jour is now got her pantaloons in a bunch. But at the same time, we just ignore the fact that these women are sexualizing the men that they're accusing. And not only are they sexualizing them, they're sexualizing them in a really awful way, in a way that actually is quite damaging. It's one thing to be sexually desirable. It's another thing to call someone a rapist. You're simultaneously drawing attention to their sexuality, but in the worst way possible, as in it is the least desirable sexuality out there. And obviously, logically, and that's what they are. And drawing that kind of attention down on someone has historically had serious repercussions in terms of violence, in terms of social censure and ostracism, and it's never questioned. They never pause and say, hey, we are sexualizing the people that we are accusing of these things, the men that we're accusing of these things, and we're doing it based on extremely flimsy evidence. But I wanted to see if Della had anything to add to all of that, because I don't think she's been. I want to encourage her to talk too.
Well, I don't know. I think going back to the whole thing of these accusers sexualizing the people that they're accusing of sexualizing them, and the fact that they are doing it in a very damning way, it's almost like they're using this as an attempt to deny men the ability to be perceived as acting without acting in a way that's sexual, and as being just regular human, wanting to be close to people and wanting to have conversation and interact in a normal way. They have to pervert the point of view, the perspective of males in general, and this seems to be kind of a tool for that, as much as it is a tool for getting attention.
Yeah. Well, I look at it and I think, if Elevator Guy had said nice tits, let's go fuck. Or even, story. Hey, I like what you have to say, let's go fuck. Right? That would be sexualizing her, right? But
that would definitely
even if there's even if there's a component of I'm sexually attracted to you, but I wanna talk more. I mean, I've met lots of people that I was sexually attracted to, but at the same time I was more interested in hearing what they had to say than having sex with them.
Yeah.
Right? At least, you would want to have the 2-hour or 3-hour or 5-hour conversation and then maybe get to the sex. Because, sex is actually quite mundane in many ways, but new ideas, interesting perspectives, all of that can be really exciting in a different way, right? So, I mean, you look at it, and even if he was sexually attracted to her, him acting on it and saying, I'd like to talk more, I would like to know your point of view on this, that, and the other. I mean, just because there's a component of sexual attraction there, does that mean that he's not regarding her as a person? Like, that's the bizarre thing to me.
That's a major complaint that really in the feminist community you hear, or from the feminist community you hear about it all the time. Why don't men look at our brains? Why don't men look at us for what we do? He
they
did
do
exactly what she said or what they said they want. He came along and said, I would like to talk more. He didn't say I would like to fuck. There was a totally different attitude, and the thing that they were complaining that they want is the thing that she turned around and said, well, no, he's sexualizing me.
Yeah.
So there's really no pleasing the feminist if everything you do is going to get interpreted as a base behavior.
You look at the typical feminist complaint about the treatment of female politicians, right? How they're always judged on their looks and blah blah blah. And I'm thinking, how many posts have I seen on? Because I was quite sort of prolific in participation on romance novel readers and writers websites and blogs and review sites, right? For a long time. And I remember a photo that was posted of Obama, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. She was chilly. He had put her suit jacket over her shoulders, and he was kissing her, and the whole thing was like, that's so wonderful, and he's such a man, and he's so sexy, and blah, 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 right? He's a real man. And I'm thinking, how is that not a judgment on him? I mean, I remember...
absolutely a judgment.
Well, everything's a judgment. I remember one of the bus boys at work, he used to tell me, good job, Karen, right, all the time, and I would say, don't judge me. And he'd say, it's not a judgment, it's a compliment, and I'd say, you're still judging me, right? Just because it's a positive judgment doesn't mean you're not judging me. And then, of course, he started saying it all the time, and it's our thing that he says it constantly, and I threatened to, punch him in the face. But, it is a judgment. Even a positive judgment is a judgment. And you find criticisms of male politicians in high places. You're overweight. Do you really think that your health is such that you can be an effective senator, or, you're old, and don't you think that you should,
actually, it's one of the things they use
make room for new blood, and all of these things, right? I mean, you find all of these, even just James Taranto of, I think it's the Washington Post, right? Because he's been quite outspoken about the war on men, blah, 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 right? And the typical feminist comment in response to him is, it comes from somebody who looks like they would have problems with women, right? Judging by his looks, obviously he's not getting any.
Yeah. Which really is a judgment of both him and women. That, the people saying that would assume that women are so shallow, that looks would be automatic, yes or no.
Regardless, I mean, it puts to rest the lie that only female public figures are ever criticized about their looks
or their sexual
attractiveness.
Or their attractiveness, which comes right back to the topic of when it's appropriate to express sexual interest and being chastised for expressing sexual interest, even if it's completely neutral and completely polite, And going back to that Victorian idea that men are not supposed to speak to women until women speak to them, essentially, which seems to be where feminists want to take the atheist community with their spat of accusations of sexual harassment. But anyway, we need to take a short break and listen to some messages from people who are part of the men's human rights community and have blogs or websites related to men's human rights. And I'll let James take that away if he's ready. James, are you ready?
Come listen to A Voice for Men Radio, the voice of Europe.
The voice of Europe.
This show is probably the only one at this point addressing the issues concerning men and boys at a European level.
The voice of Europe.
Every Friday on 7 p.m. London time and 1 p.m. Central Time.
This is the place where feminism gets to be called out on its lies and propaganda, and the state is invited to get out of people's lives.
I am Lucian Bulsan, and this is the voice of Europe.
That's the sound of a glass lens being broken. Most people view the world through a narrow lens, ignoring factors and concepts that don't fit their predetermined worldview. I'm Della Burton, author of Breaking the Glasses, written from an anti-feminist perspective with a focus on men's rights and certain social issues with an unconventional spin. You can check it out at breakingtheglasses.blogspot.com. Join me in breaking those dogma-tinted glasses.
And we're back. Back from our word from not our sponsors, but people we want you to go and check out anyway. So the topic is witch hunt in the atheist community, using accusations of sexual harassment to control the social landscape and to ostracize, interestingly enough, big male names in the atheist community, and interestingly enough, not nobody that nobody knows about. Just the high-profile targets. For some reason,
yeah. I'm shocked that Richard Dawkins wasn't accused. You know, like this is how it seems to, like, DJ Grothe, Michael Shermer, Lawrence Krauss, Bill Nye, for God's sakes, Bill Nye the science guy, accused of sexual harassment.
I'm just having this sense of displacement. Have I walked into some sort of alternative universe?
I'm not saying that it's false. I'm really not saying that it's false. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that when every single accusation that has been made where a name has been named is somebody who is instantly recognizable in the community as someone in power or authority, somebody who's sold lots of books, somebody who has spoken against the Atheism Plus, Free Thought blogs kind of form of dogmatism, that when you like, who's accusing P.Z. Myers? Why hasn't P.Z. Myers been accused of sexual harassment? We have him on videotape sexually harassing someone.
Well, you know what? All I could say is it sounds like it's a coup.
It's an attempted coup. I don't think it's going to work because, thankfully, the splintering of the community into one side being dogmatists and one side maintaining skepticism, the skeptics seem to be the larger group, less vocal but more prolific, more numerous, and they're saying, huh? What? Like, what's going on? And is, as Mr. Deity said in that video of his Mr. Deity in the Hat, after the credits rolled, that, here's a hint for those of you with no backbones. If you are unable to say no to somebody refilling your wine glass, all you have to do is not take another sip, and then they won't keep refilling it. See, that's how that works. If you don't have the balls to say, no, I don't want any more wine, you just have to stop emptying your wine glass. How hard is that?
Yeah, like you just have to say no thanks or drink slower.
Yeah.
But
or just not drink at all.
But what the heck are these people? I mean, any man who and this is the thing, they call it sexism when people look like askance at women who just, there's just so much pressure when he pours wine into my glass that I have to drink it. I have to drink it. There's so much social pressure bearing down on me.
Oh my goodness, so much social pressure.
I guess that means that maybe feminists are not as smart as horses.
When I'm puking my guts out, it was somebody else's
not as fault. Oh yeah. Well, maybe feminists are not as smart as horses. When you think about it, you know the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I mean, you pour a glass of wine in front of a feminist and she has to drown every drop.
Yeah. Or if you run your horse too much and lead them to water and they drink so much that they kill themselves or make themselves sick.
Okay, well then I guess they get out of the gene pool. But in that case, we have to deal with these people who want to make the world. So, I'm not exactly sure how you would create a world in which. What kind of world would that look like, where women are not forced to drink wine? How would we construct a world around that idea that women are being pressured to drink wine? How
okay, the way that we do that is we make the legal drinking age for women 45 years old.
Post-menopause?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes
45
sense.
years old. Now you're allowed to drink because, now you are grown up enough to not feel pressured by social forces to drink more than you can handle.
Yeah, but actually, I don't know if 45, if women are really as capable of managing these kinds of social pressures as men. I mean, if you think about it, if a man said this, that a woman was pressuring him to drink by filling up his wine glass during a meal, we would probably all laugh our ass off at him. So obviously women are not capable of managing these pressures, and I can't see where in a woman's life she would start to be able to manage these pressures. So I'm not even sure 45. I'm not even sure raising the drinking limit to 45 for women is going to work. I'm actually more in favor of the government assigning women a chaperone to make sure.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And to make sure not just that she isn't drinking when she doesn't want to drink, but that she isn't spending money that she doesn't really want to spend, or that she isn't dating men that she doesn't really want to date. And the government can vet these chaperones and assign them to women. And this particular chaperone, it has to be a man because only a man can handle these pressures, would definitely have to take charge of her finances and probably have to be with her wherever she goes. And he'd also have to make sure that all of her vacation plans she hasn't been coerced into. He pretty much has to have legal control over her entire life. Yeah. I think that would be a solution. What do you think, Della?
I think that sounds like a dad forever.
Well, it certainly doesn't sound like a husband, because in the case of a husband, the woman in question would actually be expected to occasionally put out in return for all these services.
Well, but the thing is that, what we would refer to this as, I guess we would, I don't know how to do it. Like, how would we make it so that these government chaperones actually had the best interests of the women at heart? I'm guessing that we would probably have to do some genital surgery on them prior to...
Oh, eunuchs. There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And really, what we could see is the social system, the political system involving into is we have these very high-powered alpha males like Obama, and then we have a bunch of men, or formerly men, who've been cultured to be part of this, to take part in this role as chaperones, to essentially chaperone these women who ultimately have their emotional connection with these alpha males. And I think that this really is a feminist paradise. I mean, after all, it would save women all the kind of social coercion and pressure that feminists constantly go on about that women cannot handle on their own.
Well, they can't handle it from the 80% of men that they think are below them.
Exactly. So only have it so that the pressure is applied by men who are, higher status than them. They make all the decisions, and then the eunuchs can be their chaperones. And I think it would be a perfect system. Completely perfect.
I actually think that system did exist at some point. I'm almost positive.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking it did exist at one point. I something about it is very familiar.
Really familiar.
Really deeply familiar. But
but one thing that disturbs me about, as a woman, about this whole setup is that it doesn't feel like women under this system would be free to make their own decisions, right? So basically, the ideal system for women these days, if we were to take the alpha male, the eunuch, and the everybody else male, as part of a system designed to protect women, what would happen is women would be able to make whatever decisions they want, disregard the advice of their eunuchs, and then either hold the eunuch or the other male involved responsible, criminally or civilly, for any kind of wrongdoing or mishap or misfortune. That would be ideal.
That sounds a lot more like what the feminists are going for. They want to be able to make their choices, but blame everybody else.
Yeah, but then there's sort of an existential problem with all of this, because at one hand, the woman has complete control over her life because she's making all the decisions and someone else is being punished. So essentially, she can very easily destroy her life because she has the most control, but she has absolutely no understanding that she has that control. So, I mean, this sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I think that really what feminists want right now seems to be a recipe for disaster. The whole thing with victim blaming, right? Like she there were things that she did in the events leading up to the rape that she could have chosen a different decision and would not have been in that position, right? Would not have been in a position to be taken advantage of, to be raped, right? All of these things, right? This is considered, even drawing attention to the fact that she had any agency in the situation leading up to the incident in question, is considered to be victim blaming, right? Even if you go out of it, like even with my blog post on my sexual assault, where I said, absolutely I do not take any blame for what happened to me, because that was a decision on the boys' part, the two boys who assaulted me. That was their decision. I take no blame for it, but there were opportunities that I was well aware of where I could have made different decisions and not been in a position to be vulnerable, to be victimized. And I was accused by a lot of feminists of victim blaming myself, right? Even though this idea that I had the power of decision all the way leading up, right, to the point where they were holding me down, all the way leading up to that, I had the power of decision. That was in my hands. I have the power to not let that ever happen again, right? That's empowering to me. That makes me feel like I'm in control of my life, right? Like I can make decisions that affect the outcomes that will affect me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's victim blaming. How dare you? That's
well, the problem
it's a disturbing message.
I think the problem that feminists have with genuine empowerment as opposed to what they call empowerment, but actual, genuine, I am responsible for myself, I have the right and responsibility to protect myself as well as I can kind of empowerment, is that it cuts into their ability to exploit victim status and exploit proxy victim status by claiming that they have all this work to do and they need all this funding and they need all this political power in order to protect all the women in the world, because women in the world don't have real empowerment. If women have real empowerment, then they don't have that argument anymore.
Well, any woman who wants to be empowered can be empowered. All she has to do...
Empowerment comes from the self.
Yeah, all she has to do is make a decision that she's going to be in charge of her life. That's all a woman has to do.
Well, yeah. But that's exactly what they don't want women to do, because empowered women wouldn't be attracted to the victim mentality of feminism. And they wouldn't be attracted to this idea of using the victim mentality, which is sort of is a very double-edged sword. They wouldn't be attracted to using it to control social landscapes like what we see happening in the atheism community, atheism and skeptic community. And ultimately, if women truly were empowered, if they really understood the idea of respect and earning respect by taking responsibility for your actions, taking responsibility for your behavior, accepting the consequences of your actions, then that would put a damper on feminism's ability to control the environment to prevent consequence to women, because women would say, hey, no, consequences is part of how I understand myself as a person, how I understand myself as an individual, how I understand who I am in the greater world. I need consequence. Consequence is a part of me. You don't take it away so you can control me and everybody around me for your own benefit, to maintain your idea or your power. And that's what I see happening in the atheist community. And there were women skeptics and women atheists who tried to, I guess, push back against that. However successful that was, I'm not sure. But you know,
I mean, you look at Abby Smith, right? She's a virologist. She's quite. She has a blog on National Geographic online, and Greg Layden phoned her boss. She's a PhD student, I believe, and researcher, and he phoned her boss to try to get her fired because she spoke out against Atheism Plus and Free Thought blogs. You know, you look at Paula Kirby, who's, you know, sort of a woman my age, maybe older, in the atheist community, noted speaker, right? Doesn't have a blog, doesn't have an online presence, but has a very strong conference presence. And she wrote an open letter basically saying all of this stuff is just bullshit, right? I've been attending conferences for years and years, and I've never come up against it, and it is just a political gambit, and she was lambasted. You know, you look at me. I literally have feminists flipping their nut and saying, who is paying her to say these things?
Yeah, and lambasting you for having a different opinion, and that an opinion truly is empowerment for women. It's saying, no, we don't want this fatuous praise, because our vaginas aren't our defining feature. Our actions and their consequences are our defining feature. So it's like, and one of the things that got me with the whole atheist thing, because I was reading an article that that James had dug up and sent to us. James, our intrepid producer, that he had dug up from the archives online, and it said that female feminist atheists had come out with guns blazing, demanding respect and a seat at the table, blah, 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 right? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm comparing that with Paul Elam's interview with Barbarossa,
which was not that long ago, and when he was talking with me, or he was talking about me, and he said she didn't demand a seat at the table, she didn't demand respect, all she did was put her ideas out there, and bam.
Yeah.
Right? She didn't demand anything, she just put it out there. And all of a sudden, she's got people who are following her, who respect her, who blah, blah, blah. They don't always agree with her, but, you know, these are all the things that all you have to do is do it. All you have to do is do it. You don't have to demand it. You don't have to ask for it. You don't have to demand that room is made. All you have to do is put your ideas out there, and the ideas will sell themselves or not.
Yeah, exactly. The ideas will sell themselves. And it's really about just not presenting yourself as you have to respect me because I'm a woman, but presenting yourself as, you know, I'm a person who has to earn respect based on the quality of my ideas and the content of my actions. Anyway, we have to move on to our zoologist in the field. I believe he has.
Oh my goodness!
Report. Yes, and another report on feminists in the wild. James, take it away.
Hello, this is Jack Atra, and welcome to the Feminist Wild Queendom, episode 2, where we explore the life cycle of the feminist in her natural habitat. Last time we voyaged deep into the jungles of downtown Toronto to find the rare and elusive red-crested warbler. And we did. We found her.
I'm the perfect fucking woman.
When we left her, our warbler had attracted the attention of a male of her species. Red-crested warblers are not very good breeders. Unfortunately, the female red-crested warbler generally finds the male red-crested warbler to be repulsive. Let us look in and see how our lovebirds are doing. Yes, I see that the male is about to make his move.
We stand before you today as men committed to becoming more conscious in every way. We feel deep love, great respect, and a growing sense of worship for the gifts of the feminine. We also feel deep sorrow about the destructive actions of the unconscious masculine in the past and present. We want to apologize and make amends for those actions today, so that we can move forward together into a new era of co-creation.
What a magnificent display of groveling! Perhaps the female warbler agrees.
Shut the fuck up!
Oh no! It looks like she has run him off in disgust. Sad day for him. It is an unfortunate fact of warbler biology that the cry of the female warbler is unlikely to attract any male whom the female warbler finds appealing. In turn, the female warbler blames the male for being unappealing, despite him having attempted to accommodate her verbal cues. This dysfunctional dynamic is why the red-crested warbler rarely mates successfully. They may in fact be going extinct. That would be very sad indeed. Join us next week as we feature the purple-scaled puff adder.
Prefer you didn't talk to me because you hate women. Thank you.
This is Jacques Latre with Feminist Wild Queendom.
And we're back. I'm just going to be speaking for a few seconds because I'm going to introduce James and his news, 1 minute news and activism in 1 minute, well, in 5 minutes. Take it away, James.
This is an AVFM News and Activism Minute in under 5 minutes. The Daily Caller has the presence of mind to publish this year's list of hottest teachers who allegedly got busy with students. In what is sure to be a Pulitzer Prize-winning work, the article highlights 10 alleged female skanks. According to the Daily Caller, English teachers appear to be the most likely to put out to students. Way to go, Daily Caller. I look forward to your article highlighting this year's 10 most heartthrob male pedophiles. I'm sure there are plenty of young girls and boys just dying to see their molesters described as hunky with abs to die for. In other news, 18 students at the University of Sydney decided to have their vaginas photographed and placed on the cover of the newest edition of the school newspaper. The tasteful ensemble caused quite the controversy, enough for the Student Representative Council to confiscate 4,000 copies of the paper because the vaginas in question were not censored. The reason the offending vaginas were published in such a manner in the first place?
We are tired of society giving us a myriad of things to feel about our own bodies,
the editors of the Hanosoid said on Facebook.
We are tired of having to attach anxiety to our vaginas.
One of the students, when asked, turned the whole interview into another version of the vagina monologues, praising her part on the cover, and making it clear that she has just received a lot of thanks from women at the university for making them feel more comfortable with their nether regions. Once again, folks, the official line will be, because patriarchy. I can't wait to see the bevy of flaccid cocks on the next cover. Men have body issues too, and staring at cock is the best way for us to overcome those issues, according to feminist logic. And finally, I'm glad I'm not Marissa Meyer today. She's caught a lot of flack from feminists for her posing on a couch in the September issue of Vogue. While quite a few women appreciated seeing this side of the controversial CEO of Yahoo, others wanted to make a big deal of it.
We fight so hard to be where we are and prove that it wasn't our cute bodies, perky boobs, or cute face that got us there,
said self-described pretty geek Anna Nicole Moose in response to a request for comment on CNN's Facebook page.
Shame on you, Marissa Meyer, for playing into stereotypes.
Patrice Grell-Yersick of Afrobella.com complains about the double standards and how women are portrayed.
I can't think of the last time a men's magazine chose to profile a CEO by asking him to sprawl out on a couch, she said. When, let's say, GQ or Esquire is profiling someone on this level, they're kind not asking them to unbutton their shirt and pose suggestively with any kinds of props.
Well, folks, there you have it. You can plaster your pussy all over the school newspaper because patriarchy, unless you're a businesswoman, at which point you better not lie on a couch in a nice dress and have pictures taken of you. Somebody, please, bash these fucking feminist arguments with the brick of logic! This has been an AVFM News and Activism Minute in under 5 minutes. Tune into the show on Tuesdays, where I will talk about how I'm creating my own publication full of dick pics of MRAs, because feminism.
All right. So someone called for the brick of logic. I think I know a few women who might be able to provide said brick.
I would actually really, really love for MRAs to provide said dicks.
Great rhyme there. Great rhyme.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, okay. Let's just organize this thought. On the one hand, we are combating patriarchy by showing our vaginas on a magazine cover. On the other hand, sexy clothed pictures of a female CEO is wrong.
What really gets me is that it's not just a photo shoot of a CEO. It is undoubtedly an article that deals with who she is as a person, right? It's her entire body in the picture, right? All of that, and that, her whole body and her whole personality and her occupation and her position in society and all of these things right? That is exploitive and horrible and misogynistic to do that, right? But 14 close-up shots of vaginas with absolutely no context other than they are just vaginas, right? Not even an entire body, not a face attached to one of them, right? Nothing. That is feminist activism.
Okay, well, first of all, I'll take the first bit. Now, is it really a problem that a woman CEO can be both competent and valued for her actions and also be allowed to be seen as sexy? Because I wonder if male CEOs, I know some male CEOs do actually go for the cool look, but if they really went for the sex kitten look, how quickly would they be fired?
Richard Branson, right? Like Richard Branson does the male CEO who is still hot, you know, he's still attractive, he's physically attractive, he dresses well, he poses in sort of scenarios that women would find appealing as far as what a man, you know, would maybe be doing and would be attractive to them, you know, in a man, all of those things. He does all of that. Even just his adventurous, you know, I'm going to send people to, like, freaking the moon or whatever bullshit that he does, right? All of that is what women would find attractive in a man. You know, he's take charge, he's a go-getter, he's ambitious, he's even a dreamer, you know, he looks good, he has symmetrical features, he dresses well, he's healthy, you know, all of these things, right? So, I mean, like, you have somebody like that, and nobody bats an eye, right? And then you have Marissa Mayer, right, who is appealing to male sexuality, male sexual attraction, in the same way that Richard Branson is trying to appeal to female sexuality, female sexual attraction, and you have her lambasted by feminists for degrading herself. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
Well, the hypocrisy. It's like, on the one hand, I mean, they're constantly talking about the judgment put on women, and they're the ones doing it. But yes. I wanted to pull in Della into the conversation and find out what she thought about all this.
Well, I think part of it is the feminist tendency to want to complain about anything that they can complain about with respect to the way women are treated. And the way they do that with media is they complain about any way that the media portrays women, any way the media responds to women. You look at this, like you said, this is a well-rounded article, it's well-rounded coverage of her, and it's not just about her as, you know, a businesswoman. It's about everything about her life. And that does include her being attractive. It does include her being appealing. And what they've done is not complain because she did something offensive, but they singled out the thing that they could say was offensive and focused on that. And it kind of goes back to when we talked about feminists complaining that female politicians don't get asked serious questions. It isn't that female politicians don't get asked serious questions, that feminists complain about the other things they get asked. And then if you look back at, say, when Hillary Clinton was asked about Benghazi, well, they complained about that too, because then she was being bullied because she was being asked to account for herself and her actions. So you can't ask Hillary Clinton tough questions, because if you ask Hillary Clinton tough questions, you're a bully. But if you don't ask Hillary Clinton tough questions, then you're treating her like a girl.
Seriously.
Right. And it's kind of the same thing with this situation. If they had had a different portrayal of her, if they had completely excluded anything even remotely related to sexuality, the complaint would have been, well, they're just not looking at her as a whole person. They have to strip her down and turn her into a man in order for her to feel equal to men. And because I've seen that as well.
One of Anita Sarkeesian's main things has been that if you portray a strong female character as having feminine traits, it's sexist because she has feminine traits that are stereotypical. But if you portray her as having traits that are seen as masculine, like heroism and honor and duty and things like that, then it's sexist as well because it's just turning a female character into a male character. So it's just a chick with a dick, or a dick with a chick, or whatever the fuck.
And then to top it all off, they complain that nobody wants to write female characters because they're so fraught with these landmines that feminists are putting out. Nobody wants to do it, and they end up with these incredibly stilted, awful characters as a result. Because of all, they're trying to navigate through this feminist landmine of what is an acceptable female character to portray. And but just to bring it back to both topics, I know that there is a feminist logic that explains why pictures of disembodied vaginas is good, but allowing a female CEO to be sexual as well as competent is bad. And I'm wondering if maybe we could take that trip into Wonderland and try to figure out how they would justify both, because I know that they have an explanation for it. And
they don't.
No,
they don't have an explanation other than that it's different, and it's a context.
Well, they'll have excuses, and the excuse is that they're using the vagina pictures for the purpose of communicating "don't sexualize us," which is really kind of dumb because they're using a sex organ to communicate "don't sexualize us," and that seems to be the claim that's made about that particular set of pictures. And it's kind of funny because if you turn around and you look at other images that are similar to that, and if they're seen in public, the same women that are advocating this kind of photography would go nuts about them.
Well, okay, you look at it and you think, okay, if it was 14 pictures of dicks, would it fly?
Absolutely not.
No. But honestly, I have zero problem with the cover of this magazine as it is. I have no problem with 14 pictures of vaginas. I have no problem with that, right? The problem that I have is that if you turned around and put a magazine cover out that had 14 pictures of random dicks, right, random penises, all flaccid, right, that
they would treat it like it was some kind of
put out this freaking magazine would be screaming that this was a pro-rape edition, blah, 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 it's threatening, it's toxic, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that it would be some sort of latent rape threat because an unexposed penis is not genitals. It's actually a tool of the patriarchy, a tool of rape culture.
Well, and it's a tool of all of those immeasurable and unfalsifiable things that rule the world of Atheism Plus and Free Thought blogs and all of those feminist atheists out there who are anything but skeptical. Right? That they embrace an ideology that can't be proven or disproven, that has no empirical evidence supporting it over any other hypothesis, right? And that they take as an article of faith. That's their starting point. Patriarchy, rape culture. Culture-wide misogyny. That's their starting point.
And it's
that really kind of makes feminism completely incompatible with being a skeptic, because you have to have faith in like you said, an article of faith. like patriarchy. You have to have a conspiracy theory. You have to have all these beliefs that you have an emotional investment in, that you can't stand to see challenged, and you can't stand to see possibly broken down and criticized. And
it's not even the conspiracy theories can't be proven. It's that this particular one, cannot be proven.
Well, certainly there's an article of faith in believing that somehow penises are more rapey than vaginas. Like they have just some sort of rapiness quality to them that genitals, other genitals don't have. Just innately. I'm not talking about the potential of getting pregnant, but just the fact that a penis exists naked somewhere.
It's an outie.
Yeah, just the fact that it's literally outie, because when we form, they're basically formed from the same structure. And yet one is the instrument of rape and the other isn't. And every time that I challenge them, and I recently challenged a feminist on this, sometimes it's really hard to talk to them. But anyway, she said that she was sympathetic to the argument that if a woman forces a man into sex, it isn't rape. And she actually compared it to a woman being fondled by a man in severity. So it's like, what is the logic that says that a penis is more damaging than a vagina? I mean, where is the logic behind that? I mean, if you want
the problem with that is you're asking for logic, and they're not basing their beliefs there on logic. They're basing it on emotions and, really more of a self-oriented point of view.
Yeah.
And I have a stupid story from when I was a very little kid. My brother was just learning to talk, and he was, at the age where you start to learn that you can't just do things to other people, and he bit me. And, my mother told him, don't do that, it hurts. And he looked at himself and said, no, it doesn't. And that's the way feminism is. If it didn't happen to them, it doesn't hurt. And they don't necessarily think about the fact that men have experiences too, and that when a man has experience, it can be as painful or frightening or hurtful or harmful or damaging as it would be if it happened to a woman. And they just completely ignore that possibility. And I can't think of the word, solipsism.
Yeah.
They're completely wrapped up in themselves and their own narrative, and they don't want to think about the fact that men are human beings with, their own set of experiences and emotions and senses and everything that a human being has. And so they are able to convince themselves that when something happens, like a rape or being mugged or anything that a woman might fear going through, that a man might have an equal fear of that, and a man might suffer equal pain from that.
Yeah.
And it really is an article of faith. It's you have to believe that somehow we have a species that, the male and the female pair bond, and there is no species in which a male pair bonds less than the female. That doesn't make any sense.
No.
And
actually, the male would have to pair bond more strongly.
Yeah, it would only make sense if the male pair bonded more strongly, because the children will probably, when she's gestating. But anyway, that's sort of irrelevant. But the idea is that the whole psychological, rape affects us on an emotional and mental level. It's a psychological pain. A lot of times there's almost no physical effects at all. And the reality is that psychological pain is that violation of that whole pair bonding system that we have evolved. And there's no reason to believe that women are more prone to damage to that system than men are. I mean, yes, physically they do risk more in terms of pregnancy, although in this culture men risk more in terms of pregnancy when they're raped. But there's no real reason, there's no real logical or scientific reason to believe that a male pair bonder's psychological system that underlies, that whole anatomical system that underlies male pair bonding is less fragile than the system that underlies female pair bonding.
Yeah.
And some suggestion that it might be more.
Yeah.
So it's an article of faith that somehow rape is not as bad when it happens to a man, or that penises are uniquely rapey. And I guess that gets back to that whole skepticism that, you have to base this on something, and they don't. They just base it on feelies and truthies and common knowledge that, and it's unfortunate because it does lead to double standards, like sexualizing elevator guy and blaming him for sexualizing Rebecca when the real person who's doing the sexualizing is her.
Well, what got me about the whole thing was that Healthy Addict, who's sort of anonymous accusation against an anonymous guy named Jim Bob that she chose to call Jim Bob. She basically said, This is just something that happens. It's it happens. I've seen it happen to men. I've seen it happen to women. It's something that just happens just in the course of human relations. This was one of the things that let me think that maybe her account was genuine. Mm-hmm. And I'm still on the fence. I haven't decided either way as far as whether it's genuine or whether she just kind of made it up for attention and views and the whole bit, right? But I was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt right from the start because she didn't name the person she was accusing. She just said, "Hey, this is what happened to me. It happens to lots of people, not all women. Some of them are men. It's just something that happens, right?" And but then you look at the accusations that have happened since then, and all of them being high-profile men being accused of, and you look at it, DJ Grothy, being accused of something as innocuous as when he's hammered, he says the skeptics are popular because guys like pussy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Basically, the reason why the skeptics have any credibility is because there are men out there who are pussy beggars, right? Which is absolutely 100% freaking accurate, right? But he's been called down. He's been called out as a sexist and a misogynist for calling out men who will buy into shit just over nothing, no evidence, no nothing, just because it's a woman making a claim.
Well, speaking of P.Z. Myers, and correct me if I'm wrong, is he the one who introduced this anonymous tip from an anonymous person who...
Yes, the accusation of serial rape against Michael Shermer.
Okay, I just wanted to mention this. I think I might have mentioned this before, but could you imagine having actually confessed or told someone that you were raped and have them turn around and refer to your victimization as a grenade, as a weapon?
What got me more than that was that the initial blog post that he posted with the friend of a friend accusation, right? This was passed on to me from somebody else, right? Was it was an ambiguous claim to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when Michael Shermer had basically issued a cease and desist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Order, basically on the grounds of defamation. P.Z. Myers then linked to a Tumblr blog post by somebody who had not existed prior to this blog post. It was one blog post by one user who only had the one blog post, who said, "I'm not sure, but I believe I may have been in a position where I did not give consent, or I could not give consent, and Michael Shermer had sex with me, right? Like it was another ambiguous accusation against Michael Shermer.
But
right?
even allowing that the accusation is, let's just for the sake of argument, and I'm not saying this to marginalize any actual rape victim, but just for the sake of argument, this woman was raped.
Yeah.
Then she tells someone, and then that person tells someone, and that person that other person told refers to her victimization as a grenade, as a weapon against another human being. I mean, that itself is trivializing what theoretically.
Well, it's turning it into a weapon.
Well, yeah, it's using someone else's experience of abuse.
Yeah.
It's actually using her
to serve your agenda.
Yeah, and to serve your agenda, and I believe when I talked to Della about this, she said, and Della can come in whenever she wants. It's the idea is humiliating. It's humiliating to take.
It would be. You would feel exploited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about this from the point of view of the theoretical possible rape victim. If this actually happened, she was exploited by P.Z. Myers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, what's really crappy is the first thing that he apparently thought of was how to do this. I mean, you think about it, and it was somebody sent a video. Was it Thunderfoot said in a video? You know, what would be the first thing you would think of if somebody came with an accusation like this? You would want to go to the police. You would want to
call the police,
take care of the problem. You know, help the victim, get the perpetrator, not. How can I exploit this for page views on my blog and throw a grenade into the community and start, making changes and taking people down with this? It's nothing but, like I've said before, it's predatory exploitation of proxy victim status.
Yeah. He's exploiting this victim, and he gets a pass with this behavior. If there is a victim, this guy is exploiting her. And then the additional coverage that I saw was so. I mean, there was this person who wrote an article that I don't know if he or she actually did go back and forth with Shermer's. Is that correct?
Michael Shermer.
Michael Shermer's lawyer.
Yeah.
And it was the most flippant thing I've ever heard. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking, you people are talking about a rape accusation, and you're talking about it like it's some sort of minor social.
It's like an end zone victory dance.
Yeah, it's like these people sound like sociopaths, and I'm not talking about it in terms of it being a false accusation. If this is a real accusation and you're using somebody else's abuse as a political football, that is sociopathic behavior. But anyway, at the same time as I feel great offense over that, we also have to move on from this topic, and I'm introducing an old friend who gets a little bit ranty at times.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
must be John.
But before we go to our friend who often graces us with a rant, I'm just doing a call out now for people who want to call in. The number is 310-388-9709. That is 310-388-9709. And if you want to call in, get in quick, because the 2 hours they're really going by fast. But anyway, take it away, James.
When I was still a small boy attending school, I was not the most politically aware of people. However, oblivious as I was still sharply aware there was an international movement to oppose and to end the policy of racial segregation in South Africa called apartheid. The entire world recognized that putting one group of people, identifiable by biological characteristic, over another group of people, identifiable by biological characteristic, this was morally wrong. Products and services from South Africa were boycotted. National and international pressure groups were formed and maintained. And eventually apartheid was ended in South Africa, notably in 1983, when a new constitution was passed implementing what was called the tricameral parliament. Racial segregation and the suppression of the basic rights of the non-white majority were ended because the rest of the world recognized its abject and fundamental immorality and increasingly treated the nation-state practicing apartheid as an outlaw state. And now it's something increasingly practiced all over the world. The segregation of human beings based on biological characteristic. The elevation of the human rights of one group and the suppression of the human rights of another based on biological characteristic. They don't call it apartheid, though. That's a word in Afrikaans, meaning apart. They don't even call it segregation, borrowing from the term racial segregation as it applied to whites and blacks in the United States prior to the successes of the black civil rights movement. The term now used to describe apartheid is an Orwellian term, making it sound like segregation is somehow a good thing. They call it safe space. A space that is safe sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Well, it sounds pretty good until it is realized that what's really being said is that the clubhouse is for whites only. Darkies can keep out, and by golly boy, don't be caught in town when the sun goes down. But of course, keeping your dark-complexioned neighbor off the golf course isn't even going to fly as a concept today. It's a complete non-starter. Racism is almost universally understood to be unacceptable. It's atavistic, it's primitive, it's regressive, it's immoral, and frankly, it's stupid. You cannot pass yourself off as a civilized person while still putting people into categories of good or bad, acceptable or undesirable, the elite and the untouchables based on biological characteristic. Well, you can't if the characteristic is ethnicity. You can't if it's sexual orientation, and you can't if it's sex. Well, you can't degrade or exclude or segregate human beings by sex if they've got the right sex. But if they've got the wrong sex, you sure as fuck can. You just don't call it segregation or apartheid. You call it safe space. And in doing so, you imply that what you need safety from is not what those devalued, diminished, segregated human beings might do or say. You imply that the biological characteristic of identity you used to exclude them is what you need safety from. In the year 2013, after seeing the world totally reject the fascism and the violence and the embedded hatred of racial apartheid, words are inadequate to describe the depth of contempt and disgust I have for people pushing for the exact same thing, practicing it and praising it, when nothing except the biological criteria for exclusion have changed. Rename the same thing with some positive spin. Call it safe space. And that's why this movement, the men's human rights movement, does not and will not ever push for safe space, not even for men. Because what that Orwellian term really means is apartheid. It means segregation. It means racism. Safe space. The conceptual bubble of socially accepted bigotry to be kept safe from being punctured by the truth. If we're going to go back to a tiered society, if we're going to regress, in the knowledge of the recent memory of rejecting the same thing worldwide within the last 3 decades, can we at least have the common fucking decency to call this what it is? Call it apartheid. And call your son, call your brother, call your husband what you know he really is. Kafir. If you don't know what that word means, it means untouchable. It means Untermensch, underhuman, lesser person. It means nigger.
And we're back. That was a pretty powerful rant from John the Other, and certainly topical to what's happening in Atheism Plus with safe spaces for women, and not for men to be.
Not safe spaces for women, safe spaces for women and gays and lesbians and transgenders and disabled people, and anybody who isn't a straight, white, cisgendered male. So, yeah.
Well, the thing is that every situation where what essentially is apartheid has come about, every time when one group says we need to be separate from this other group because they're dangerous and they can hurt us and they're dirty and their sexuality is predatory and mean, every time that happens, that group that's engaging in creating the apartheid has had its excuses for why, and those were its excuses for why it was acceptable to fence off certain groups of people. And
they definitely have always had a whole plethora of excuses.
Yeah.
Plethora.
So what do you think of that rant, Della? It's pretty impactful.
Yeah, it is pretty powerful, and it was spot on there. It really is bigotry to have safe spaces. I mean, or at least to claim to have safe spaces in a situation where they're really not needed. And it is demonizing men, and by saying that you have to have safe spaces for women away from men, because the only reason women would need safe spaces away from men was if men were bad.
You know, I honestly think that safe spaces are okay. They're okay as long as you don't live there. As long as that's not where you exist. As long as that's not the only place where you engage in discussion. I don't have a huge issue with maybe segregating groups and saying, okay, well, this is a group for people who are lesbian. This is a group for people who are transgender. This is a group for people who are straight. This is a group for people who are male. This is a group for people who are female, right? But honestly, I don't think any kind of policy decisions or social norms should be formed based on the opinions generated in these safe spaces.
And they shouldn't.
Well, one of the things that I would have to say about that is that's not really so much safe spaces as dedicated spaces. And it's one thing to segregate a group out and say, well, we're discussing this, or we're centered around this, and we're going to create this space based on this. But it's another thing to say, no boys allowed because boys are yucky. It's very juvenile and very it is very
way beyond boys have cooties. They are now saying that boys are actively, the very presence of men and boys is actively harmful to women.
Oh, it's not cooties, it's rabies.
Start taking some callers here.
Yes.
And I'm going to start with Night Runner. Are you there, Night Runner?
Yes, I'm here. And first off, I'd like to apologize for last Thursday. My phone just decided to die.
Oh, no, I remember that. No problem.
Okay, so do you have something? Did you have something to tell us about the topic or the various stuff that we've been chatting about today?
Yeah, I agree with you, Typhon. This whole thing is a coup, and P.Z. Myers is a useful idiot, and I really think that's what.
Well, I think he's a useful idiot that hopes he will be king.
He wants to be one of those alpha males with his harem, and every other man is a eunuch.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, until they jerk the rug out from under him when they don't need him anymore.
Yeah, until they Schweitzer him.
Yeah.
And Della touched on something a while ago about, you guys were talking about, well, what's the logical reason behind this? And she said, well, no, there is no logic to it. She's exactly right. There is, you got to realize that with most or the majority of modern women today, what they feel, that's what is real. That's what is reality.
Yeah.
If they feel it, then that's what it is.
Mm.
What an incredibly awful
substitution of emotion for logic.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And one more thing, and then I'll get off here and let you guys take some other calls. If you have to demand a seat at the table, then you don't deserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Agreed.
And you guys have a good night, and I'm enjoying the show. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on, Knight Rider, and thanks for those words of wisdom. And now we're going to Valsan, Lucien Valsan, our very own voice of Europe. Are you there, Lucien?
Yeah, yes, I am here. I've come along to mansplain a little bit.
How dare you?
Wait, Lucy, I need my fainting couch and my ether or my smelling salts. Just give me.
Hartshorn.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Back a little. I want to extend a little bit the topic of witch hunting atheism. I would contend that this thing has been going on for longer times than Elevatorgate and all the other crap that has happened in the high circles of the atheist movement. I mean, for instance, most of the feminists are atheists. So most of the feminists were somehow part of the atheist movement one way or the other.
Yeah.
This kind of PC bullshit has been going on, or at least I have been noticing it for the last 10 years in the international atheist movement, regardless of the language they use. I mean, even the Iranian atheists had some PC individuals in there trying to police everyone else's thoughts. So I would say that the feminists have played a winning game in trying to overcome the atheist movement entirely. And ideologically speaking, that was bound to happen one way or the other, since the atheist movement has been focusing a lot in criticizing Islam, even though not always correctly. But because of that, the eternal criticism of Islam, most of it being around of, Islam is a misogynistic religion, which it is in some ways. And the fact that most feminists are atheists, I say that this was bound to happen one way or the other, and it is a global phenomenon. I mean, we had P.Z. Myers here in Bucharest 2 months ago, and after he had his goddamn speech, now suddenly the atheists and agnostics of Romania now has turned out to be atheists and agnostics of leftists, basically. So I would say, and the same phenomenon has happened in Serbia, and the Iranian movement is now split. One way or the other, it will split entirely, and I saw this happening for 5 years now. And I think it's older than Elevatorgate. Elevatorgate was just the trigger, so to speak.
Yeah, it absolutely has been going on for a long time. A lot of the old-time atheists that have been in this for 10, 15 years have told me that they've seen this coming. For a long time, and there's just really, Islam is one of the main sort of hubs around which all of this can coalesce. But what I find absolutely absurd is that, because, as you said, Islam is arguably misogynistic. It's arguably misandristic, but if you're looking for obvious misogyny, if you're looking for obvious unfair treatment of women, you would look to Islam, if you're blind to the unfair treatment of men. And yet what they seem to be focused on since Elevatorgate is not Islam, it is the privileged white male.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's basically the moment where atheist feminists meet cultural Marxism. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. And
sorry, we do have other callers on the line, and we're running out of time. So I'm gonna have to say goodbye to Lucien and his mansplaining.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mansplain
I'll be doing
somewhere
that tomorrow for 2 hours, so no problem.
But thanks for calling in, and thanks for giving us the greater perspective that this is not just happening in a vacuum. And I'm going to go now to, just a second, Duckman. Duckman, can you hear us?
I can.
Eric.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, ladies?
Hey.
Hello.
So what do you have today, Duckman?
Well, actually, I just called in. Like, the only reason I'm calling in is because I'm at work, and so I can listen to it on my phone. I didn't intend to say anything.
Say something.
But since you're on, you have to say something now. So something topical, perhaps about
okay,
slut
well,
walk.
Yeah, well, by now I think everybody knows about the little love affair between me and Ryan Vanderhoek, and they know about the brick of logic. I was talking to Dean Esme today about the logistics of getting actual plushy logic bricks made.
Oh, that's what he was on about. He was saying something to me about plushy bricks of logic on Skype, and I was like, "What are you even talking about? What?"
This is the guy. What was his name again? Duckman?
Ryan Vanderhoek.
Ryan Vanderhoek said that Duckman essentially, with his sign professing his love for sluts, which he brought to a slut walk, and it was identical to all the other signs professing support for sluts, that his sign was somehow a brick of logic pounding into the head of some innocent lamb rape victim.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was
somehow Eric Duckman attending the slut walk with pro-slut signs, articulating a pro-slut message, was engaging in a protest against the slut walk.
I don't
Go ahead.
I don't think that his the whole thing about the brick of logic was about me. I think it was about the men's rights movement in general.
Because logic is exactly like a brick to the head, right?
Yeah, well, and they use the cuddly teddy bear of censorship and lies and insults. To deal with
No, I would actually recommend anybody who's interested in anything to do with men's rights to watch Eric Duckman's response to Ryan Vanderhoek on Men's Rights Edmonton's YouTube channel. Because it kicked ass. It kicked ass.
Well, and what I wanted to say about that was that Ryan and I actually know each other in real life. We were friends. We were friends for quite some time. We did the pod activist thing together. And then I started getting into men's rights, and he started getting into this group called Next Up, which is a hardcore leftist group. And getting all of his cues from feminists, and he's always been very very skilled with the ladies.
Oh no, he's attractive. He's an attractive guy, and charming.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. Very charismatic fellow. So he called me. He saw the response video and he called me up, and I don't want to give away what he said, because he told me he's going to make a new video clarifying what he said in his new and improved position after getting a horrendous spanking on YouTube there.
And all of the listeners can enjoy all of this interwebs, slut walk, men's rights drama, fresh and right out of the oven at mensrightsedmonton.com.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
And take a look, because it's great. It's great drama, very delicious, very juicy. But I do have to get moving, because we have other callers on the line. So thanks for calling in, Duckman, and good show baiting the slut walk.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, ladies. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Now we're going to go to Tyler. Let's see if we can get Tyler on. Yep. Are you there, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm here.
Did you have something to tell us today about
I was just talking about Michael Shermer.
Okay.
Michael Shermer, yeah.
His rape accusation.
Yep.
Did you ever hear anything about what he said about it?
All I know is that he posted a cease and desist order to P.Z. Myers, and then he did an interview, sort of an email exchange that he did not give permission to make public. And that email exchange, he basically said, I'm not admitting to anything. It was all just it's all just fabricated, blah, blah, blah. So.
Okay, is that all? I got another message from him. There's a guy named Emery who's creating a fund for his legal actions, and
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fund that people can donate, and I'm reading something from him.
Mm-hmm.
Let me quote it. It's called "People are asking about this legal fund set up in my name. If I'm aware of it, if it's legit, should they donate? For the record, I am aware of and completely support the legal fund and deeply appreciate Emery for setting it up and for the people who have donated thus far. I made it clear to Emery when he set it up that the money goes into an account that I have no access to, that my legal bills will be paid out of the fund directly to the law firm representing me, and that if there is any money left over after the case is finished, that it be donated by Emery to a non-profit organization of his choice. If anyone would like to email me directly for confirmation of the above, my email is mshermer@skeptic.com, which is posted on my webpage, www.skeptic.com.
And we can get access to the fund through there as well?
Let me read the last before I tell you. It says, at the end, my reputation is all I have. I did nothing wrong, legally or morally, and I intend to defend myself and prosecute Myers until he issues a retraction and apology as stated by my attorney. And it says Michael Sherman. And the site is called, it's www.indiegogo, I think it says indiegogo.com project/Michael-Shermer./legal/fund.
Okay. All right. That's a little bit difficult to decipher, but I assume if people do a search on Indiegogo and Michael Sherman, they'll find the fund in question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we gotta move on because we don't have a lot of time left. But thank you for that heads up, and I hope that this radio show sends a few people that way to help him out. And so now we're gonna go to Jesse. Are you there, Jesse?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. So what do you have to bring to the conversation tonight?
Something that comes up quite a lot in your discussions is to do with kind of misplaced authority and whether it's caused by, male versus female traits, logic versus emotion, or ideology kind of gone wrong, or what's the balance between the two, or the three. I'm talking in terms of why is feminism and feminist ideas so readily accepted. And I would say, whenever you bring up stuff about, even though I kind of agree, often Karen brings up stuff about women responding to emotion. Even emotions have some kind of reason, and it seems like it's gone beyond any kind of natural emotional response that someone would have to something. It seems like it's really governed by the ideology, and it's really governed by, just a really misplaced way of thinking.
No, I think let me correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea is that this is no longer seems to be the realm of actual human emotion. It now is the realm of using emotions to control the space, to control the dialogue, to intimidate people, to shut people up, to essentially create totalitarianism.
But I would actually say that is a human thing. Like when you look at witch hunts, they've existed all through human history, right? That there is nothing better to bind a group in a tribalistic manner to concentrate on sort of collective goals and collective well-being as much as an ideology. And you look at the way we are now is the way we are 200,000 years ago. We are programmed to look for danger. We are programmed. You look at the news. If it bleeds, it leads. Right?
Okay, but we do have to move on because we don't have a lot of time, and I know that James actually wants to make a statement right now. And go, James.
Okay. All right. On the subject of tribalism, and pulling these people together. Governments have been creating false enemies at the gates for a very long time. What you're looking at here is no different. If you want to pull people underneath one ideology, then you must create an enemy at the gates in order to do so. And that is exactly what Atheism Plus has been doing.
Yep. Wise words
by
James. And thank you, Jesse, for coming on the air. Sorry we had to shoot you out the door that quick, but we are getting very close to the end of the show, and I just want to do a round robin before we close out. Karen, do you have any really quick thoughts?
The quickest thought I have is that when you look at Atheism Plus, they are linked by their dogmatism. Dogma is one of the perfect, most like the sweet spots of linking human psychology to a common purpose. That's why it's so strong. And the skeptics who are actually skeptics in the community don't have that. They don't have that common ideology. They don't have that common psychology. They don't have the psychological mass hysteria that is consuming the Atheism Plus group.
They don't
have that, and so they are
sense of us versus them.
They're more numerous, but they're less cohesive, right? So,
Stella, did you have anything to add to that before we sign out here?
I think I'd have to say that when dogma walks in the door, skepticism kind of has to leave. You can't really have both your a marriage to an ideology and the open skeptical mind. You either have to have one or the other. And in that instance, the feminism is not really compatible with skepticism. And this looks more like a movement among feminists to sort of go in and take over this community and turn it to their own purposes instead of going in and becoming a part of the community and working toward the intellectual goals of the community. Very much like we've kind of seen them do with the men's rights movement, where they've tried to come into men's rights forums in various areas and try to twist the discussion more towards their purposes there as well.
Yeah. Yep, and those are some excellent points to leave off with from Della and Karen Growitz. But we do have to get going, so I think the only thing left is to recommend to the audience that they may need to refill a prescription of a certain type of medication that comes in pill form and has a certain color.
And the color is red.
Yes.
Yeah. So remember, take the red pill.
The sun
This is Honey Badger Radio, reminding you to take the red pill.